Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. In continuing with the concept of indexing and profiler, I'm going to demonstrate to you how you use the SQL Profiler to tune indexes. And I've gone over that briefly before, but I'm going to go into a little more detail here in showing you the tuning template that the SQL Profiler uses. Another thing you should note, I've added in red because I've added this subject matter. I'm going to show it to you in this video, and that is how a user can create a user-defined template, and I'll be demonstrating that to you also. So let's go to our SQL server, and here. Before I execute all this, let me show you a couple of things. If I highlight this, notice that along with the select statement, you've got all the columns mentioned for that table, along with the where clause with the last name equals Garcia. Before I execute this, I'm going to go over to the display executed plan. And you'll notice that it's recommended we create a non-clustered index on the last name, because this is where the where clause indicates. But it's also including all the other columns that we've mentioned in this select statement. So just take a note of that. In this, you'll notice that in this select statement, I've only got one column mentioned. And it's also mentioned in the where clause. So when I highlight this now and go to my display execution plan, you'll notice that even though it's suggesting a non-clustered index we created, it's not giving me the included, because there's all the columns that were part of this select statement are in the where clause. So just take a note of that. The other thing to note is if I highlight this and again go here, you'll notice that it's creating a non-clustered index, and it's smart enough to know that it wants to create an index on the first name because I've put where fname equals Gloria. Same thing with state. This is called the SQL optimizer, and it's a part of the engine that we can't control, but it's done in the background. So the query optimizer detects the where clause and refers to the state, as you can see. So that's just one of two things I want to know. And then I'm going to create a SQL user-defined template in a second. So now let's execute this. And before I do that, let's go to the SQL tools. Let's open the profiler. And now we're going to use the template. And we've gone through this before, so I'm going to go drop down here. And this is the tuning. So when you want to tune indexes, this is the template that you can use, and it's a great resource. Here are the events. And we've gone over that also, so it's going to grab all the stored procedures associated with tuning and the SQL batches or SQL script. And if I run it now, obviously there's nothing running against it. So let me go through this here. Now I'm going to quickly go through this. Now I've already shown you that it needs to create a non-clustered index on state, on last name and first name. So let's see if that's recommended. So I'm going to highlight this, and it's executed. Now this may take a couple of seconds, a little longer, because there are going to be a million rows in a second. And what I'm trying to do right now is what's called build a workload. The next concept that we're going to be looking at is called the DTA, or the Database Tuning Advisor, and that's associated with this file. And what the DTA does, it basically recommends index tuning based on a workload. And a workload is this file that I'm going to be saving. So let me just select that while we're talking, or while I'm talking. So while this executes now, so all the result sets, as you know from the SQL Profiler, when we save it to a trace, that is also referred to as a workload. And then the DTA, or the Database Tuning Advisor, which I'll talk about soon, requires a workload to work against. And then it goes through all the select statements and SQL procedures and recommends what to index. And I'll be showing you that in a second. So that's why I'm just demonstrating it here. So that's done also. So now if I go to my SQL Profiler, and now I can stop it. And now in order for me to get that workload, which is a trace, I'm going to go trace, save. I've already mentioned it here. I'm going to override it. And we're going to click it. We don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. And now that we've saved this trace file is a workload that we're going to need for the DTA. And I'll be showing you that in the next coming video. So I'm going to leave that right now here. But going back to our profiler. So now let me go and introduce you to the concept of creating a blank template. So let me open it first, and then we'll talk about it. So now that we've associated with, the SQL portal, you'll see one of the templates is called blank. If I click on that and go to the event selections, now you'll see none of the columns are highlighted and none of the events are selected because this is a blank canvas. It allows the DBA to control what to monitor. And in this particular case, what I'm going to monitor is a demonstration. There's a tremendous amount you can monitor. If you wanted to monitor date of birth, file auto growth or auto shrink, you can do that. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go to objects. I'm going to go, and as I click on it, you'll notice that it allows, as I mentioned before, it allows description right here. So you can see the objects altered. Any objects that are altered, it's going to record. Any objects created, any objects deleted. Now, the other thing is that I don't want all this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter some of the data that I don't think I'm going to need. And what this is going to do, let me continue while we talk. What this is going to do is going to allow me to save this template so I don't have to constantly recreate it if I need anything to monitor objects being deleted, objects being created, and so on. So you'll see that in a second. I'll leave that. And obviously I'm selecting what I need, what I don't need, and I'll leave the objects. Request ID, I don't think I'll leave that right now for our purposes. SPID we can't do, server name, and we can uncheck this. Start time's fine, transaction ID, we can uncheck that, and we can uncheck this. And then if I show columns, uncheck it again. So now you can see that the single object is called objects with altered, created, or defined. These are the columns that I want data against, and I've selected those. And I'm just going to run it quickly and then stop it and go File, Save As, Trace Template. And now we can name it. I've already named it. As you can see, I've named it objects. So I'm going to go OK. It's going to probably ask you, well, right, yes. And now it was successful. So remember what kind of, if I go properties, you can see it again. Let me quickly do that because I didn't show you that. If you want to see which templates you created or what's behind these, just go right-click Properties, and it gets back to you the trace properties. So remember, now this is the one we just created. So if I can cancel it, I can cancel it. So now you come another time and you want to rerun that trace and you don't want to recreate it. So now you can use that template. So you would open it up. In this case, now I'm going to select the object, and you'll see the word user next to it, and that defines that it's a user defined created. So I'm going to just go objects, and just to verify that that's what I'm going to be selecting, and I'm going to go run. So now it's going to detect any objects from any user that's created, deleted, or defined. So in this case, I'm going to create a database. I'm going to use the database. I'm going to change right here. I'm going to create a table in that database. So now I'm creating objects here, and then I'm going to delete that table. And actually, I'm just going to delete the whole database itself by right-clicking it and delete. And now hopefully, since I've run that user-defined template, it will record all my creations and deletions of either table, databases, or objects. So let's go over to our SQL Profiler and stop that. And as you can see, if I just expand it, as you can see, it's collected all the information that we need. So the objects that were created or deleted here are named here. As you can see, we've got the person doing it or the login person doing it, the host name, the database that was run against, and the various objects that were created. And as you can see, it's created, altered, deleted here, and so on. So that's a great way of detecting, and this is obviously the SPID, which is the person, also along, well, I'm the same one here. But you can start detecting utilizing a template to determine what kind of objects were either created, deleted, or updated, and so on. So this is how you use a thing. Now, obviously, I'm being very simplistic in my creation of objects, but we can get fairly complicated here. But remember, the key thing with SQL Profile and the best practice is to try to retain only the data that you need. So simplicity actually is the best tool for this. So I'm going to close this now. And as I said, I'm going to go back to the result set when we talk about in the next videos about the DTA utility. So I'm going to leave it there, and that gives you a quick introduction of using the database tuning template and how to create a SQL profiler template that allows you to allows you to detect deletions in this case. So I'll just leave it there before I go over 20 minutes. And my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator.